If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction. Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Arlina Allen, host of a One Day at a Time podcast. Thank you for joining founder of Parents and Addicts in Need, Flindt Andersen, myself, Jason LaChance, on the Don't Hide the Scars podcast.
Hello, Arlina.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, when a woman has a tagline, if it was in a bottle, a bag, or blue jeans, I was doing it. You got to speak with her.
That's right. Listen, I'm very honest and transparent. Maybe to a fault.
You're my kind of recovery person. You just put it all out there.
I'm just saying what everyone else was thinking.
That's exactly
or
right.
doing and unwilling to be honest about, right? I mean, come on.
Yes.
Yeah, our nefarious ways that imbibing whatever.
Listen, I'm not going to say it was all bad. Let me just say that.
That's right.
And I now, with that said, have you experienced this? Because I've had the backlash with, me talking about my stories, other people's stories. I don't know that we've got it yet on this podcast, but people of being so transparent that. Yeah, I had a lot of fun too, until it wasn't fun.
Yeah, no, I have not had a lot of backlash about talking about it, but I think it's so important to just be honest and recognize, when I quit drinking and doing drugs, it was like breaking up with the love of my life.
Right.
It was the thing. And to be perfectly honest, especially in my younger teen years, drugs and alcohol actually saved my life. If I had to feel all the feelings I was feeling, I don't know that I would have survived. But at some point, my savior became my executioner. Like I could have died several times. And so it's just, we're just people of extremes, right? We just live that extreme life. Yeah.
Well, when we're tortured with the big T, little t of trauma, and we're trying to escape that, I think that's for maybe the people that aren't addicts don't understand.
They don't get it.
That,
Right.
Like you said, I don't know that for me, it was more my mid-20s. I agree with you. I don't know that I would have survived without booze and the occasional drug.
Yeah, I mean, I had no coping skills. I had nothing to help me process my feelings to resolution, especially like trauma. I had some sexual abuse when I was very young by a neighbor. And I didn't even know that was wrong, number one. And I hear that a lot with the women that I work with in my coaching business that they don't realize that's wrong, that they're being harmed. It becomes like normal in a sense. Like they don't have any context or perspective as a young person. And so they're carrying around all this guilt and shame. Like, that was my experience. I was carrying around guilt and shame. Like it was my fault. Like I was a bad person.
But don't you find that most kids, teens, young adults, we even under normal circumstances, we don't have coping skills. We always talk about the brain around here and how that brain does not become mature till the age of about 26 without drugs and alcohol.
I know, that's crazy.
Right. So there's a time span, in between the time you had, let's say, big T trauma, right? At maybe 10, 11, 12, whatever it is. And now you're in your early 20s. And let's say you're not even doing drugs and alcohol. How do you even cope with that?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just a question I've always asked.
What's so interesting is Tara Brach talks about covering strategies. Tara Brach is like a Buddhist meditation. She's a psychotherapist. She's amazing. She wrote this book called Radical Compassion, and then the other one was Radical Acceptance. But she talks about how we have these covering strategies. Like we're trying to cover the pain. Like nobody knows how to resolve it intuitively. Yeah. So we cover them. We cover them with things like distraction, right? I always say that the purpose of obsession is distraction. We obsess over drugs drugs, alcohol. In my case, it was like finding the love of my life or earning a lot of money. I thought those were the things that were going to save me. And I didn't recognize or acknowledge I was trying to be saved from my present moment, because in the present moment, I just couldn't accept my feelings about myself or just the pain I was in. I was so disassociated from my pain as well that I just kept focused on all these addictions, really.
Right. And that's interesting and important that you bring up that disassociation. People, we don't even necessarily understand what it is we're trying to deal with at times. Like you said, you didn't understand that it was wrong, that it was harmful, And I mean, gosh, I've been the same. I thought, this is just normal. This is how things go. This is how life is.
Well, Did you have that sense that there was something wrong with you? Like it was your fault?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It seems to be a reoccurring experience that, it must have been my fault. I don't know why people, I think it like goes along with that whole not good enough thing, which seems to be a universal human experience, just not good enough. Like we go into comparison, everybody else looks like they're doing better. I am faking it. I'm this imposter. Everybody else got the manual. I didn't. And I'm just like, going to be found out. It's like a terrible way to move through life.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where we start to put the mask on and people pleasing. I know you were a big people pleaser too, correct?
Yeah. Super into like image management. I spent a lot of time and energy decorating the outside. But, when I got sober, I was terrified because I was like, I don't have anything going on the inside. These people at these meetings wanted me to work with other women. And I was like, what? I don't know how to manipulate them. I don't think I could. Are you sure? Are you sure you want me to work? Yeah, it was terrifying. But, if you're desperate enough, you'll do anything that they ask you to do.
A wife, mother. How did it go with your husband also in recovery? How did it go with talking to your sons about addiction and really bringing them awareness about it? I mean, it's a necessary part that Flindt, myself, the whole pain organization pushes is have those conversations with your kids. And it's almost, God, I mean, what point is too young now? I mean, it's crazy. We've talked to people that have started substances at 8.
Yeah. I don't think it's any age. I mean, you want to start, 8, 9, 10. I mean, look, if I really had to put a number on it, I would say 10 or 11, to start talking to kids about this. But it's interesting. I want to go back to one thing real quick. Everybody talks about my generation. My dad's the World War II generation, right? And how nobody talked about issues. Nobody talked about. Guess what, gang? It hasn't changed today either. Okay, I mean, most families that I've dealt with, they don't talk about issues as much as we didn't. So that's why I think we push it as hard as we can here. Because somebody's got to start talking to their kids about this stuff, especially in today's world with fentanyl and some of those nastier drugs that are out there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So again, to answer your question, I think it needs to start at least at 10 or 11.
Yeah, so it sort of just came up naturally. So I was involved in 12-step programs. And so was my husband, and people would come to the house, right? I'd be working with women. They'd come to the house. We'd go into a room. We'd have discussions. Or for a long time, my husband held a meeting at our house. And so a bunch of men would come over and they'd sit in the room and they'd, be chatting afterwards. And, the kids would be like, who is that? Or why are they here? Or what's going on? Or we'd go to somebody's sober milestone celebration, things like that. So it was just always in their world. And we would occasionally have it would just come up naturally in conversation about, well, mommy doesn't drink and daddy doesn't drink. And we used to, but we're not the kind of people who my body doesn't process alcohol normally. And I behave I behave badly. You kind of, or I behave in a way that I don't, is not in alignment with my goals, shall we say.
Get into some shit, huh?
Yeah, right. And so we just kind of talk to them about it as they're able to understand it. Like when they got to a certain age, I was like, look, you can do drugs, but you might end up with a dick in your mouth. Okay. I mean, maybe. Isn't that horrible?
It's true though.
It's true.
It's true. Yeah. Listen, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if it's not in alignment with who your authenticity.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know. Man, you roll the dice, and we would tell our kids, you have both barrels pointed at you. You got it. Right. You have the gene. We called it the crazy star chromosome. It's like you got it on both sides. So listen, you may, and it's about, you can start, but you might not be able to stop. And I don't know where that line is for you.
Sure.
Right. I don't know where it is for you. And I was totally naive. I thought my kids were totally straight. Like they never left the house. They're always online playing video games. Thank God for video games. I thought that would keep my kids safe. They're in their room. I know exactly where they are at all times. But when we moved out here to Idaho 3 years ago, my younger son, I did not know that this was a thing. Like Snapchat was not a thing very long ago. And I got sober I got sober in 94. So what I didn't know is that you can have drugs delivered to you through Snapchat. And I did not know that. I've been out of the drug scene so long that, because in the realm that I live in, I don't talk about the problem. We talk about solution. We do kind of talk about the problem in the sense that people need to express their pain. And my role is to, like, everyone needs to be seen, heard, and understood. So my role, I make people cry for a living. That's what I tell people. I hold, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? But I hold safe space for somebody that they can express their pain. And I'm not there to try to fix, or I will occasionally offer context and perspective, but I'll ask first. But it's really, I see you, I hear you, I understand. And I was there too. There's like this connection. And they say that empathy is the antidote to shame. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the world that I live in. And we do that with our kids too. So when it came to, the details about how kids are getting a hold of stuff these days, I was completely illiterate. I did not understand how it worked today. And I didn't know the signs to look for. And I was blindsided when it happened in our family, even though we had talked to our kids from day one about, we love our kids, we protect our kids, we say we're sorry when we make mistakes. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like we give our kids coping skills, we give them space to share their feelings, and still it happened. And that still proves my point. All right. With every parent that I've talked to, Arlina, we've had over 7,000 families march to this office, over the last 10 years. And that still proves my point. No matter how much you talk to your kids, no matter how much you believe in them, you give them the coping skills, they're still going to be teenagers. Sure. They're still going to lie to you. They're still going to, they're going to fuck it up somewhere along the line because they're supposed to. Yeah. That's their job. Right? Yeah. That is their job. And if I have to hear one more parent going, my child tells me everything. No. Okay. No. Bitch, please.
Right? It's just bullshit. Yeah. So again, proving my point. I'm not here to be right all the time, obviously. I mean, there's a lot, but I'm right. Okay. These kids are going to be kids. Yeah. And you're right. There's no parenting manual for anybody. Right? I mean, I don't know. I didn't have one either. So you're just going to have to do the best you can as parents. But you have to become more informed. You have to become more educated on this. You have to know that your kids can order on Snapchat while they're having pizza with you and watching a movie. for parents that tell me, they go, well, and I'm sorry, Arlene, I don't mean this against you, but for parents to go, well, I never knew that would happen. Well, Jesus, how could you not? With everything that's going on in the drug world today, why aren't you doing everything you possibly can to educate yourself on the what ifs?
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt, Andersen, and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery. To proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
Yeah, here's the trippy part, right? So I'm thinking we're cool. We've been teaching our kids how to process and cope with their feelings. And we've been very open about our recovery, and we're doing all this stuff. And I am aware that there's a certain amount of experimentation that happens. Not everybody crosses the line eventually, and all this stuff. And I am in the world of recovery. Yeah, right. And when we found out what was going on, it was a shock. I was truly shocked, because we thought we had, educated our kids. We thought we were educated, but when it was happening to us, we didn't know what to do. Even the medical professionals were not helpful. There was no clear, and I thought, how can this be? We had an emergency room doctor testing my son, and his brother, the emergency room doctor's brother, had been a heroin addict and had died 2 or 3 years prior to the time that we had been there. And he was misinformed about some of the drug stuff. Like, my son was taking Suboxone. Right. He was taking a bunch of other stuff too, but not heroin. But he didn't know that if you have never had heroin and you're taking Suboxone, that it gets you high in some way. He was not aware of that. And this is an emergency room doctor whose brother was a heroin addict.
Most doctors, Arlina, I've wrestled with these guys for the last 15 years. Most of them do not know addiction. They can tell you the chemical makeup of a drug and what it does, but they know nothing about addiction.
They know nothing. Yeah. No. And when I asked, I said, do you have any board certified addiction specialists on staff? We went to 2 different hospitals. They didn't have any in either hospital.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Everybody needs a Dr. Drew.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was shocking to me to learn. I interviewed somebody on my podcast, Dr. Jason Powers, who's a board certified addiction specialist. And he was stating that the board for plastic surgery had been established decades prior to the board for addiction. And I thought that just speaks to our priorities, right? Yes. We'd rather save our face than our ass. Yeah, let's fix it all on the outside. Let's fix the outside. Let's ignore what's happening on the inside. And that it just speaks to our culture too. My dad, bless his heart, when he retired, he was an SLE teacher at the jail, and he met all these people that were in jail. Almost the majority of them were there on drug or alcohol related issues. Right. Whether they got caught and busted for stealing or armed robbery or DUI but it was all related to drugs and alcohol. And so our country does not know we're anyway.
We're ass backwards on all of it. We really are, for sure. Most crimes are committed under the influence of something. Yeah. Absolutely, they are.
Yeah. I mean, that desired fix. Well, that's just our country to do everything. We got a problem. We'll address it when it gets really bad.
Right.
And it's getting there. I mean, coming into work this morning.
No, it's bad.
Yeah, I don't know about there, but where we're at in Fresno, California, we now have it up, that fentanyl awareness billboard, and they are all over the place.
Yeah, we've been working
the
hard
fentanyl
on
is so scary.
It's unbelievably scary. It's
Yeah.
And parents, when we talk about experimentation and that most kids are going to experiment with something, they really don't understand that drug dealers now are lacing fentanyl on pot, cocaine, obviously the fake pills, the fake M30 pills. It's being laced on everything. So yeah, mom and dad, maybe your child is not a drug addict. Maybe your child is, not an alcoholic, but the fact of the matter remains is that they try to experiment with something out there today. It can be a one and done, and it's over.
Yeah, the experimentation it's Russian roulette. And they don't understand that. I think there was I was doing some research, and I think there's been like almost 100,000 deaths in the last year due to fentanyl overdose.
Yes.
I mean, it's outrageous.
But the other thing we're not talking about, we're neck deep in the fentanyl issue here, and we work with DEA and Homeland and all of our district attorneys here. But the fact of the matter is that these parents, this is what's interesting. I almost lost my train of thought there for a second.
It happens to me too.
I was like, well, wow, where did I go?
Side effect from drugs.
Exactly. But now I can blame it on age a little bit. So that's another good thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times parents want to blame something else for their kids' drug use. Whether it's ADHD, bipolar, depression, anxiety. And a lot of times I'll tell these parents, you think maybe they're just a good old fashioned drug addict?
No.
Do you think they just kind of wanted to go out and experiment and got caught up? Not everybody has trauma. Not everybody has a mental health issue.
Right.
I'm sorry. Sometimes your kid is just a screw up. And sometimes they're just going to go out and try it. And we hope that they don't cross that imaginary line at some point, right? Because you said it earlier that kids, there's not everybody's going to become a drug addict. Not everybody's going to become dependent on a drug. But again, always going back, today you experiment, it could be one and done. And the last thing you want to do is go to your kid's funeral.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, my nephew is 27 years old and he's had 4 friends OD, and he's like a good kid. He went to a good school. He went to a good college. He's a professional, and people are just experimenting. They think they're doing a little cocaine, or they get some fake pills or whatever, and it's laced with fentanyl. It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
I mean, we're just seeing the number continue to rise.
It's rising. It's not getting any better. And actually, people in Washington, D.C., they actually think this is China's covert war against us. And I have a tendency to believe them because the majority.
Does that make sense, though?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so I just have to. So they make all their money off of us. So why so it doesn't make sense to me that they would want to kill us, because they're making all their money off of us. We're their cash cow. We're the consumers.
We are. But again, most people back in Washington and most politicians today, and even myself, we believe that this is China's way. Instead of dropping a bomb and taking over the world, this is their covert actions because they know we're a pill society. They know that we have this major issue. We like drugs, all right, and we want every pill for every ill, and so they're shipping it into Mexico. It's almost like Russia and Cuba back in the 60s. Now it's China and Mexico. And it's coming over, it's coming over the border in droves. Look, you can't tell me as the United States that we couldn't stop that if we wanted to. And that's a whole nother topic that we don't need to get into. But the fact of the matter is that we've got so much of this stuff coming over the border. We can't stop it. We can't control it. We can't make arrests. And until we change the laws and the penalties for these drug dealers and these drug runners that are coming over, this thing is just going to get worse and worse.
I heard that in Texas, they're calling it poisoning so that the drug dealer can be charged with murder.
Correct. That's what we're doing here as well. We just had some laws changed in California to call it poisoning because
fentanyl poisoning.
Fentanyl poisoning because if you go any other route, it's hard to approve intent. But with a poisoning, but here's the rub with it. When somebody gets busted now, they will actually, and I'm giving you the layman's terms, they will sign a piece of paper stating that they know that fentanyl can and will kill somebody. So if it happens again, now you're going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter. So it's still a slap on the wrist the first time for somebody to get caught. Does it suck? Yeah, but it's a start. At least it's a start somewhere with this, because we just can't put these people in jail.
Yeah. And I think it's a big hot mess. And it's like, well, then what do we do with the kids that are struggling? Right. You talk about telling your the parents that their kids are screw ups. I mean, I think I might frame that in a way that, they make mistakes, they experiment, they're curious, they're going to do all these things. Like if somebody told me that this would happen, like actually, here's the thing is I saw, because of, our lifestyle and everything, I saw the isms in my child.
Sure.
Like I saw it. And we tried to do whatever we could to prevent it. And at the first sign, we shipped him off to rehab in another state because I didn't want him to make druggy friends in his own backyard. Right. We shipped him off to rehab, and we're in Idaho. We sent him to California for 30 days. And because he was underage, he was exposed to some really hard luck cases, like kids who are, and it's so interesting. I talked to this neurobiologist, Judith Crisell. She wrote a book called Never Enough. And she talks about the signs and the precursors to addiction. And she talked about how risky behavior is one of the signs. And I think as parents, we don't really know what to look for. We don't really know the signs, right? So risky behavior, the earlier they start experimenting, the more likely they are that they'll develop something. And so as a parent, looking back on my own experience, what would I have done differently? I don't really know that there was a whole lot I could have done differently.
Sure.
Because as soon as we found out, we did something about it. We found a backpack that had a fifth of Fireball and a bag of weed in it, and it was like pretty shortly thereafter he went to rehab. It was like, we're not even going to mess around with this. And we got a lot of pushback from our community saying, I think you guys are overreacting.
Wow.
Like,
whoa.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
People told us that they even other coaches, people in the recovery community are like, are you sure you guys aren't just overreacting?
What is wrong with those people?
I don't know. We took it very seriously.
Good for you.
Because of our, and he was on something and the ER doctor couldn't identify what it was. I think he was probably taking some kind of fake pill. It was a blue pill. I don't know what it was. We looked it up.
I do.
What is it?
If it was a blue pill, it was more than likely what we call a press pill, a fentanyl press pill. And here's why the emergency room didn't know. They had for a long time, they did not have tests to test for fentanyl. That's most emergency rooms in the United States did not even have a test for fentanyl. Hell, we have them here. And if it's a blue pill, and if it was, we do. And if it was stamped with an with the initials M30 on it, then for sure that was. But doctors don't know that. Yeah, look it up. It's called an M30, right? And it's a blue.
Yes.
It's a blue pill. Yeah.
It was interesting because my friend who is a physician's assistant, I showed her the picture and she looked it up and she described what he should have been displaying in terms of behavior, but what he was actually displaying didn't match. So I was like, give me
an explanation. What was he acting like?
Well, I don't remember what he was supposed. They're like, oh, if he's taking this pill, he shouldn't be acting this way. But he was like lethargic, and he was speaking slowly, and he was kind of emotional, and I took video of it because I wanted to show it to him later, but and I don't remember what they said, how he should have been behaving, but I was like, it must have been a fake pill.
Yeah. Well, look, opioids, that was my, I was the king of opioid addiction. And opioids can do two things to you. They can make you, of course, very lethargic and, mumbling of your speech and very emotional, but they can also give you a bump. It can also kind of jack you up a little bit and get you going. That's early in use. So more than likely, again, if that's that blue pill, yeah, you're just going to kind of be like this and mumbling your words and drool coming out of the
blinking really
mouth.
Slow.
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. But again, going back to what you were saying a few minutes ago about the 100,000 deaths, what we're not talking about in this country is we're not talking about the number of people, two things, the number of people that have overdosed and lived. And so why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we talking about where are we sending those people to treatment? Yeah. Because those people are still out there. And if they're not getting help, they're still using. Yeah. And so this thing is just a revolving door. Is what it is. We never seem to address all the issues at one time. We always want to address this piece, that piece, this piece. And the fact of the matter is, yes, look, I'm a recovering opioid addict. If I had taken fentanyl, and by the way, I have had it because of surgeries and those kinds of things. And yeah, it is an unbelievably great high. But if I overdose from fentanyl and they take me into the hospital and they don't have some sort of follow-up or a place to send me afterwards, my ass is running out of that hospital to go use again. Yeah. Because I'm going to go right into withdrawal symptoms. And the number one reason why we don't get clean is because of the withdrawal symptoms. They are too damn painful. They're too hard. And until our society understands this, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. That's all we're doing right now.
They don't put, they should be putting these people through medical detox, right? Once they're aware of.
But Arlina, now it opens up a whole nother Pandora's box of insurance. I own a treatment facility as well. So not everybody has a PPO. A lot of people have Medi-Cal. A lot of people have government aid insurance. They will not cover treatment. Yeah. And if they do, they don't pay anything worth a shit, to these treatment centers in order for us to keep our doors open. So a lot of times we can't even take the Medi-Cal client. We can't take the Obamacare client because it's not that we don't want to. We can't afford to take the person.
Can't afford to do it. Yeah.
Right. Especially in California where everything is through the roof, so it's an enormous mess that we're in right now.
How did you guys, because you said your son was 17 at the time, I bet you were up against a lot just to get him into a facility.
No, it actually was pretty easy. We identified one that had a juvenile program, the camp in Scotts Valley.
Yep, I know. In fact, I was just going to say that it had to be the camp. They're one of only a couple that take minors here in California.
Yeah, we were lucky because of our connections. We had a family friend who started the camp.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And plus being in San Jose, that's where everybody went, right? It was like the local rehab center. And we were aware that they had a juvenile program. So I guess we just got lucky that we knew about it. And that's where because they were telling us that the social workers here were saying, don't send him to the one locally. They'll just make friends. And the likelihood of him relapse, they'll have like new connections. And so you don't want to get sober in your own backyard. So we sent him away for a month and he was exposed to a bunch of, he was going through rehab. There was a guy that was like 15 or 16 who was already a parent. Oh, right. Wow. And then there were other kids this was their 5th or 6th rehab that were just off the charts, and their poor parents were just trying to keep them alive.
Right.
It's just terrifying. So it was really an eye-opening experience for me, because we thought we were kind of in the community and had a lot of resources. But when it was our turn in the barrel, we were kind of at a loss, and so grateful that we had community to support us through that process and call in the professionals and the counselors, and we did the whole thing.
Well, and I also hope that that you understand this, and I'm sure you do, and that because a lot of people don't, there is no cure for opioid addiction. It's manageable. I'm by any means am I cured? I'm not. I didn't use yesterday. I didn't use today. Right. I don't know what tomorrow holds. Opioids are a very tricky drug. A lot of triggers.
Sure.
That continue. Again, I don't have many today. I don't have that obsession or compulsion to use anymore. But people have to be enormously careful, because as we get older, we'll just take the surgery thing. People are going to have surgeries as you get older, or you break a leg, or you've got. I had open heart surgery. So every time I've had 35 surgeries, Arlina. So I have
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a boatload.
Several baker's dozens, ladies and gentlemen.
You bet. But we always have to have that plan for discharge, right?
Yeah.
Even though I'm in recovery, we have to have that plan, because look, there's a difference between full-blown addiction and dependency. You can become dependent on an opioid in 7 days.
Right.
That's the problem. And
Wow.
you don't want that.
Yeah.
You don't want that continuing and turning into long-term use, because you are going to go right back into your addiction as quickly as possible if you don't watch it.
Yeah, that's terrifying. It's like we used to hear that saying, once an addict, always an addict, and that's true. I definitely protect my own sobriety. I practice abstinence. I'm open to other people practicing MAT. I have no judgment on how people maintain their, they just stay alive, and just keep on doing your best to evolve. We're all evolving, right? So, right. Either we're evolving or devolving. So it's that kind of speaks to that one day at a time thing. We're just, just for today, I'm just going to practice self-care and connecting with others and focusing on the solution. It's like, I don't need to focus on the darkness. It's that saying that we don't find the light by further investigation of the darkness. It's like, I'm clear what the problem is. Let's just focus on the solution.
Right.
When did things finally come to a head for you? You're 27 years coming up on 28, right?
I celebrated 28 years in April. So it's been a minute. I got sober. Yeah, I got sober when I was 25. I kind of crashed and burned early. But what did it for me was the whole sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had a really bad experience with my sister one night, and physically hurt her. And nearly, anyway, it was all bad. It was like one of those, I woke up the next morning with the incomprehensible demoralization again. And I was just so sick of it. And that began my journey of asking the questions, am I an alcoholic? What makes somebody an alcoholic? What crossed the line? Why can these people drink with impunity? They're drinking as much as I am. What makes me different? And it just started me on this path of questioning. And I started feeding my brain and reading all these books. And it took me, I practically lived in the self-help section at Barnes and Noble, but it took me 2 years of wrestling with all these ideas before I was and trying different things before I was really ready to surrender. And there was power in surrender. We think of it as a weakness, like you're giving up or you lost, but there was power in that surrender for me. And I had that gift of desperation. I was willing to do anything to stop drinking and doing drugs. And that's when they told me I would go to these 12-step meetings and they would say, all you have to change is everything. And I was like, sign me up. There is nothing, that I want that I had that I still wanted. I had always wanted to be somebody else anyway, my whole life, so yeah, I didn't see a problem. And then the 4-step, they were like, oh, you got to work these steps. And this 4-step, everyone's like afraid of it. I was like, you mean this woman has to listen to me complain about all the people who did me wrong. Like, it's licensed to bitch. And she has to sit there and listen to, are you kidding me? Oh, so excited. It was amazing.
I think sometimes when people come to the surrender point is they think it means, oh, this is the point we get down on our knees. Yes, that's kind of true, but really it's the time we start to stand on our feet in life to move forward and take onus of ourselves. That's why people always anyone that talks to me, I'm a firm believer of the 12 steps. As I've said here, and even Flindt, we think, hey, if we just had a 12-step program in like high school, we don't have to call it something, but just really kind of working that. It's got so much of a brilliant blueprint. It allowed empowerment. And yes, I had to strip away things, but through that, I started to gain empowerment. Boundaries. Thank goodness for boundaries.
Personal responsibility. Yeah. I called it I had to, for those, I really encourage people to try the 12 steps. However, there will be a segment of the population who, no matter all the context and perspective that I offer to navigate certain challenges that are presented, very stereotypical challenges. I will give you context and perspective so that you can navigate through those challenges successfully and gain the benefits of the program. However, there will be a certain segment who still will not be willing to go or can't or whatever. That's fine. Right. And so I reframed a lot of that stuff as a sorting process. We're sorting through the past and we're sorting through personal responsibility, letting go of what's not yours so that you can bear the weight of what is. Right. And for me, I was such a people pleaser. I was like taking responsibility for other people and trying to control them or save them or whatever. And then when they wouldn't act right, I would be resentful. It was a mess. It was a mess. And then the inventory process helped me to sort through my past, recognize my part in the presence of somebody who was like loving and compassionate. And we were just looking at the facts. We were looking at reality, right? To see what was the truth and what was my responsibility. I learned, it showed up for me over and over again as I was taking inappropriate responsibility for others and not responsibility for myself. I was blaming other people for my lack of happiness. And once I realized that I wasn't responsible for someone else's feelings, I was responsible for my own, and that I could learn to be honest in a compassionate way, then that was when I started finding my power. I found my internal locus of control as opposed to an external. And some people think, step 3, turn your will and your life over to the power. That's an external locus of control. Only if you think that higher power is outside of you. And what I learned was that it was inside. So it all is with its internal. We are way more, people think, powerless over, I'm not powerless over alcohol. Anybody who ingests a chemical will have the physical chemical reaction that alcohol has, or drugs or whatever. It is a biological, physical, scientific thing. It's nothing personal. Everybody is powerless, but that's the whole point. You take it so you feel different, right? But and so that's kind of how I think of it. It's just, let's present different contexts and perspectives so that people can take in these ideas and sort. To me, it's like a big sorting process. What's mine? What's not mine?
I'm glad you bring that up. Yeah, it's for sometimes newcomers like, what the fuck does it's an inside job mean? Well, Arlina just laid it out.
It is an inside job.
So
it's all very confusing.
Yeah. What led you down the path of where you really wanted to share your story, let alone doing your podcast? Of course, Arlina, the host of One Day at a Time podcast, plus self-esteem coach. You do private coach. What really took? Because you were pretty successful in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I did. I did high-tech sales for companies like Adobe or HP. And I did, I was in the startup world, and the money was great, but I hated it. It was not in alignment with my core values. And at some point, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I got certified to be a recovery coach. And my focus is really, focus on self-esteem in the sense that we need to change our identities and reinvent ourselves. That's the name of the class, is reinvent. We have to reinvent our identities. It speaks to sort of like the growth mindset, as opposed to a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is, I'm bad at math, whereas a growth mind says, I can take a class and learn how to get better at math.
Right.
We have these ideas about ourselves that I'm not a good person. And so we can, break that down, these subconscious beliefs that we develop in childhood, without the context and perspective. We develop this identity, and a lot of times we have these limiting beliefs. And so I really saw over the years that we only allow into our lives what we believe we deserve on a subconscious level. Like, I would challenge anybody to, wherever you are listening to this, look at your outsides, look at your physical environment. That is a reflection of what you believe you deserve. Every decision that you make, we're living in the residual of all of yesterday's decisions. Everything from the way we choose to style our hair, to the clothes we wear, to the people we surround ourselves with. And it's all based on, what do I believe I deserve? Right. And so I am sort of obsessed with this idea about sobriety through self-esteem, because when we can, and listen, I'm talking about positive brainwashing here. It's like we're being brainwashed all the time, but let's be intentional about what we allow into our minds and so that we can start changing our identity to be that of somebody who is able and that is worthy and deserving of all the good things life has to offer. It's all in our minds. If we can deconstruct our subconscious mind where all our beliefs are held, we can reframe some of those things, and we can start, attracting and choosing better. Yeah. And so that's really been my obsession, is to help people, break down their thinking, find the error and the presuppositions, and change reframe some of the beliefs so that it's more positive and they can start allowing better things in their lives.
So when do you start the process with somebody once they get clean and sober? When do you find that should actually begin? Because I've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, my coaching process, I work with women who are actively trying to quit. And so for me, it always starts off with the self-care process. We develop survival instincts when we're children, like disassociation, right? And so it allows us to survive, but it's not I deal with a lot of successful professional women, because that ability to deny the self, to get work done, shows up in like achievement. They're typically very successful, but their relationships are a shambles because they're so disconnected from self. How can we communicate to somebody else what we want or what we need in an authentic way if we don't know ourselves?
Sure.
Right? We've been living the life that other people think that we should live. And so it's no wonder that people come to me, they're like, I don't even know why I drink. And I'm like, of course you don't. You've been so disassociated from yourself for so long. You don't even know. You don't even know what you think or you feel. You're not authentic because you've been in survival mode for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the process, we start with the self-care practice, and then we move to building community and support. And then I have a 5-phase hypnosis process where we sort of go back and do some age regression and sort of deinstall some of those triggers that were established in childhood. We go through a forgiveness of others and forgiveness of self and a confidence building. So it's like a 5-phase process, but all the while sometimes it just depends on where they are. There's some crisis management stuff that needs to happen. Sure. So we might involve something like a pseudo 4-step to sort of help them recognize that they play a part in the relationships that are causing current crisis, that are causing triggers for them to drink.
Right.
So it kind of depends on, but I've just been in the game for so long that I can sniff it out in like 2 seconds.
Sure. How do you get across to people? Because when I'm listening to what you're saying is purpose over pleasure, because pleasure can be, well, with three people here talking, an insatiable thing, right? We all sought escapism and a sense of pleasure, whatever methods we use, but really instilling, sense of purpose. Because once you start to get sense of purpose, like you said, even over these women that are big on achievement, and that's a pleasure trigger, as opposed to a purpose of what did you do amidst the work that got achievement. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
that's really, you're speaking to we have two levers, avoidance of pain and the seeking of pleasure, right? Those are, and when you break it all down, those are the two levers that we have. And so, the way I sort of approach, especially the high achieving women, it's like, if you drink the night before, you are not able to perform the next day. And for some women, the not being able to perform and produce and, attack the day is, and it's like, what happens to you? It's like, oh, I feel bad. And I'm like, let that pain burn you a little bit. Right. The next day, let it burn you a little bit. Let's not cover it and pretend like it's not happening. I'll validate their pain, but it's like, take that in, because and for some women, that's enough. And then we get to, what is your core why? And that speaks to the purpose. Like, what is my purpose in the world? When you get to there's an exercise. What's like, what do you want to achieve? What's important about that? What's important about that? What's important about that? When you do that 5 or 6 times, you get to the core why. It always seems to be some sort of, I want to have an impact and help others. Fulfill my purpose and impact others. And sometimes then I say, then that's when you get up in the morning and I say, you need to do your self-care practice, you'll be at the crossroads. You're going to say, I'm just going to go do this, check my email first, or I'm going to sit down and meditate, or do the journaling, or do the yoga, or whatever self-care practice they decided to do. And I'm thinking, in that moment, think about how shitty it feels. Like, when you let that pain burn you, think about how shitty that feels. We are more motivated actually by avoidance of pain than we are going towards pleasure. People will do 10 times more to avoid losing $5 than they will to earn it. Like, nobody wants to, you know what I'm saying? $5, $100. We're more avoidant to pain than we are pulled towards pleasure. But I think it's important to have both.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Absolutely.
I forgot what the question was, but hopefully that was helpful.
that was it. I was talking.
I forgot what you asked me.
Purpose over pleasure. The pain on the back end kind of method, so to speak. I know that's
both are important, but people are definitely more motivated to avoid pain and humiliation and.
Sure.
Makes sense.
So,
Ironic though, that when we fall into addiction, we humiliate the shit out of ourselves, don't we?
Isn't that hilarious? And that's the whole thing about, you don't want to tell people you're sober. You would show your ass in public, loaded. Right. And God forbid you say, I don't do that anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Ass backwards, right?
Right.
There we go. Ass backwards again.
Ass backwards again.
It just goes to show the logic of our brain sometimes and the necessary work to rewire. Yeah.
I haven't thought about that. That makes perfect sense. I mean, that's right? Actually hilarious.
Yeah.
We had no problem in going out there and making complete asses of ourselves. Right. Yeah. But for some people to go out and go, I'm clean and sober.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
do that anymore.
People always say, it's like, how do I tell people that I don't drink? Just say, I don't. If you say it, people receive the information with the same intention that you offer it. Here's the difference. I don't drink anymore. Or it's like, I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in the delivery, right?
All in the delivery.
It's like, don't make it a big deal. It's just like, just be nonchalant. It's not a big deal. But if you act like it's a big deal.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And I always use my golf guys, okay, as kind of, because I belong to this golf course and there's like 25 to 30 of us and I'm kind of the older guy in the group. Everybody's, 5 to 10 years younger than me. And they all drink, right? And of course, they all know what I do for a living and know that, I don't drink and I don't do drugs anymore. And it's just not a big deal to them.
Sure.
You know, and I'll screw with them sometimes. Like I'll come in, I'll have a horrible round of golf, right? And everybody meets in the grill room and they're having beer and cocktails, whatever it is. And I'll go, damn it, that just sucked today. I'll take a jack on the rocks. Okay. And you will hear 25 guys go, no. Okay. I mean, now they've got my, not that I'm going to ever do that. Right. But it's hilarious because they've got my back. You know, it's like, no, we'll kick your ass if you ever take a fucking drink again. You know, you got to
that's setting up your environment to support you. Yeah. I always say, tell people you're sober, you know, tell people you're not drinking today or whatever. Right. Say whatever you want, but it's important to let people know where you're at.
You bet.
And I think go ahead, Arlene. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say it and not be like all super heavy about it. Right. You know, it doesn't have to be like this heavy, embarrassing confession thing.
Well, and I think the interesting thing, what, you know, like Flindt, you just illustrated, is we get that in sobriety, the gift of who we show up for and who shows up for us. It really starts to reveal what our connections are, you know, what the real bonds are. And there's something about, you can start to process that and go, oh yeah, that person, toxic traits. And I even bring toxic traits to them. Yeah, best we just kind of, you over there, me over there. It's better for life. And it's hard, but it's true. And it's a wonderful gift that we start to receive.
It's so funny that you say that. So I live by this idea of if you spot it, you got it. Right. There's this idea that people are just mirrors. They just reflect back to us what we like or don't like about ourselves. And again, it's like empathy and compassion is the antidote, right? It's like that person that is rubbing you the wrong way, they feel toxic or whatever. It's like, well, how am I like that? You know, and, you know, my prayer has always been, you know what, God, just change me. I don't know what's going on with that person, but I know that if I see something in them that I don't like, I am somehow judging myself. And that is an area that needs to be healed. Those people are my teachers, as offensive as that is to my ego. It's like the people I dislike the most. I go, oh, there's a part of me that now knows, oh, that's my teacher. They're giving me an opportunity to practice compassion for them because I know I have that. And I hate it about myself. Right. And my sponsor a long time ago said, she laid down the gauntlet. She's like, can you love your unlovable parts? Because recovery is about recovering your whole self. And so that has been the challenge is, can I love my unlovable parts? Where can I bring more compassion to that person who is so offensive to me? Right. You know, where have I behaved selfishly, destructively? Where have I been, you know, selfish and self-centered or whatever it is that I'm judging? You know, where have I been? My thing is self-righteous arrogance. I can't stand people who are condescending to me. Right. But I do that too sometimes. I do that too. Yep. And do I want justice or do I want mercy? I want mercy for my self-righteous anger. Like, I actually don't want to carry that self-righteous anger. It's exhausting and it hurts me. Yeah. And I don't actually really want it, you know, and I have the gift of, you know, a self-examination process. That person doesn't. You know, where can I bring self-compassion? You know, it is tempting to just fuck off over there and I'll just be over here. Right. And maybe that's appropriate. You know, there are people like I always talk about boundaries, right? It is important to have boundaries, but sometimes we can use that information for our own evolution. Yeah. And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then thank you for laying that out. Cause not every situation is go the fuck over there. I'll go the fuck over here. And sometimes it is. And sometimes it is.
And that's why it's so confusing. Recovery is confusing because it's hard to know, but that's why we need each other. Yeah. That's why we need each other, because we can't see emotion will color your perspective and you can't see things clearly, right? It's context and perspective. And that's why we need each other. They say that alcoholism is a disease of isolation and connection is the cure. And the reason why connection is the cure is we get that empathy and compassion from others instead of the judgment or the justice, right? I don't want justice for my character defects. I want grace. I don't want,
Exactly.
But that's what I get from the other people in recovery is they offer me grace. And as I receive that grace, I can then offer it to others. Yeah. And so that's why we need each other, because it's hard to tell when you're in it and you're emotional what you're supposed to do. So it's good to get outside perspective.
Yeah, very valuable. Well, Arlina, if people want to know more about the One Day at a Time podcast, your self-esteem coaching, your private coaching, how can they find you?
Well, they can go to soberlifeschool.com and there's links to all the things. And I do offer a free strategy call. If anything I have said resonated with you and you just want a little, maybe you just need a plan. I'm happy to jump on the phone with you. There's so many resources. It can be super overwhelming. So, and everybody is different. So people can set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me and you kind of give me the lay of the land. I can make some suggestions or present a coaching plan. But there's lots of free resources too. So money should not be an obstacle. And so I'm just happy to share all the resources that I have.
Well, for those listening or watching, you can click the links down there in the podcast description to connect with Arlina. My friend, thank you so much. It's always lovely to talk to you.
Arlina,
it's always good to have a chance. Yeah, it was so nice to meet you too. And I can't wait to have you on my podcast. Jason's been a guest. He was a great guest. And so you're up next.
I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the work you do.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.